Well, the New York Mets lost another series, and Max Scherzer once again was the culprit. Is the Mets' quote unquote best trade asset even movable? I'll be discussing that more on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. Also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. As I'm recording this right now at 9:57, the game's still going on, but I'm so confident the Mets are going to lose this one as they're trailing 6-1. I figure, you know what? Let's just hit record and get things going. It's a Sunday night. Maybe I want to go to bed a little bit earlier. This was a frustrating series, and there's a lot of places and we can turn and look at and point the finger on why the Mets lost another series. But I'd like to start with the supposed ace of the Mets, Max Scherzer. If Max Scherzer pitches up to his role as the ace, if he's the guy he was against the Dodgers, the Mets win this series and you're happy. It's just that simple. But Max Scherzer, who fixed his slider, right? Did the whole episode last week. Scherzer said he fixed his slider. If Scherzer's slider is on in the next two starts, well, at least he'd have trade value. But what does Max Scherzer do on Saturday? He gives up not one, not two, not three, 4 home runs. And that right there is the ball game in the series. Now I'm going to rewind a little bit and break down everything that happened. But to me, it has been just running theme all year. I've been saying it time and time again. It's been Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. And at times, really, well, not even at times, frequently, their lack of performance, them dropping the ball in big starts, that has just torpedoed this season. Now, look at Carlos Carrasco on Sunday. And this game that, again, is currently going on as Brett Beatty's up. There's already an out. I swear the inning just started. Oh, Brett Beatty already ground at it. Great. Regardless, the start of this outing, Carrasco gives up 10 hits and 2 1/3. Doesn't even make it out of the third inning. A way worse start than Max Scherzer. But Carlos Carrasco is your 5th starter. You're not expecting him to deliver. You look at the series as a whole, and the toughest game should have been the rain delay game. Okay, you start out, you had Kodai Senga, so that was your, I guess, ace in the hole because he's the one who pitching like it this year. He was throwing the ball pretty well on Friday night, right? And he would have given you some length, I think, in that start. Now, he gives up a run in the first inning, a leadoff hit. Jarren Duran steals second, goes to third. So, even though he gave up a run in that first inning, it wasn't like loud contact got him. It was 3 groundouts after giving up a base hit. And then he gets dinged up on a Fenway double that would have been an out that ends an inning anywhere else. And those are the runs Senga allowed. And the Mets get 2 2-run homers in that game before the rain. They're sitting 4-3 going into Saturday as they had to resume play. And in that game, where you had to turn to your horrible bullpen, and you got 2 innings from Grant Hartwig. David Peterson didn't pitch well, but Dominic Leone did. Brooks Raley did. David Robertson did. You found a way to get the tough game, and you hand the ball to your ace. And if he pitches the way he's supposed to, the Mets win that game. And you look at how everything broke out. First inning, leadoff homer, which is like, all right, coming off where he's talking up his slider and everything. And he's speaking, he's trying to maybe speak himself back into existence on Sunday. The prior week that, okay, the slider fix is there and he's back. Well, guess what? You've been giving up a lot of home runs on fastballs. This one was a curveball, but still, it's not just the slider. So he gives up that home run there. Second inning, again, leadoff homer. That one, I believe, was a cutter. Okay. The Mets, though, 4th inning, they actually let him get a fresh start. They erase it, right? You have Lindor gets a hit, Pete Alonso a double, and then you have just gift, a baseball gift. Jeff McNeil base hit It's going to score 2. Plays coming to the plate. Alonso's going to beat it. Catcher steps up to catch it to cut it off. Try to gun down McNeil at second. Throw goes past. Jeff McNeil gets a little league homer. You think after winning that first game, surviving the bullpen, and getting momentum back, you're golden. You're golden. You have a chance for Scherzer to step up in those final innings, get you through that game, and you win a series. And hey, whatever happened on Sunday didn't matter. And if you remember going into the series, I said, look, if it comes down to a rubber match with Carlos Carrasco, I don't necessarily like the Mets' chances playing at Fenway. And I mean, let me actually check the game. Looks like it's still going on. Tommy Pham's up. That's cool. Back to the devastating loss on Saturday. Then it's the home run to Yu Chang, which guess what it was in that inning, the fifth inning that ended up tying the game. A slider, a hanging slider right down the pipe. So what happened to that fixed slider, Max? He said after the game, slider grip. He knew that the grip was off and should have adjusted it, didn't. Hanging slider, but he still felt good about a slider in the start. Man, I don't care about your slider when you give up 4 home runs. And at this point, not that he has to say something, but you might as well just say, get in front of the camera and say, you know what? I'm just not a good pitcher this year. Just own it. Just own what it is. And look, I get that I'm speaking from a place of frustration because in reality, Max Scherzer is still a talented enough pitcher that he could lock it in. And we've seen him lock it in. But locking in for a start or two isn't going to save the Mets season. And at this point, the guy would have to go on some unholy run down the stretch where he'd have to lock into the point where he's the most devastating pitcher in baseball again for a couple of months. And how can we at all have confidence that that's going to happen? And the one thing I was hoping for, really, because it's hard to have faith in this team. I was hoping that the Mets would go on a great run and win a lot of games. Okay, maybe that's not going to happen. I was hoping bare minimum Max Scherzer could pitch great in his final 3 starts before the deadline, and the Mets could find some team that would take him and that would give something back for him if the Mets ate the salary. Now, I mean, what could you possibly do to get this guy off your books? I really don't know. And that's where we stand. And the thing about this team heading into this deadline is there's nothing to sell. I did a whole show on it. What do the Mets have worth selling? There's really not much of anything outside of a Tommy Pham. And so you get to the point where this just seems like it might be a wasted year for the New York Mets. And that's what I want to talk about next. One, can they trade Scherzer? What would have to unfold where that would even be a tenable situation? And then 2, do you just already turn the page to 2024 and say goodbye to any hope of this season? Because I think we're getting pretty dangerously close to that being the case. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Want the chance to win more money with less picks? Head to Sleeper, where you can win up to 100 times your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Sleeper's now offering up to 100-time payout for up to 8 pick contests where you can choose as many as 8 players that you like and pick more or less on your favorite baseball stats like home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. Get your picks right and you could win big. There's built-in group chat functionality as well, so you can see and copy your group's picks with the tap of a button. Entries can be made in 30 seconds or less. It's that easy. There's also safe and fast withdrawals. Use promo code LOCKEDON and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. The Mets will be playing the New York Yankees at 7:05 Eastern time on Tuesday night. Catch every pitch of the Mets hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Now, there's been some reports. Also, I should actually note, although anyone who's been listening to this already knows this, but just check for myself. It is official. The Mets lost. So that is another series down the drain. 6-1 to score there. Honestly, almost credit the bullpen for keeping them that much in it even. But it was just another rough one. And you look at where this team is and what they have ahead of them, as there's now just 6 games left before the trade deadline. There's not a lot of hope Okay, there's not a lot of hope, and there's not a lot of hope at the deadline either. If the Mets were to go on a crazy 6-game winning streak, they would be exactly 500. That's where they're at. And in that situation where you beat maybe a Yankees team that's on a downswing themselves and you beat up on the Nationals, does that convince you enough to buy? Like, does that actually convince you enough if you're Steve Cohen, you're Billy Epler, to say, hey, we're going to trade some of our prospects to help our chances this season outside of money trades? And I almost think those are out. Why is Steve Cohen going to burn more cash on this team? I mean, I know he doesn't care for the most part and he's really rich, but how much money do you want to set on fire? I mean, because you just made a trade like that for Trevor Gott, and it seems like he got because Trevor Gott has been awful in a Mets uniform. So maybe the Mariners knew what they were sending you when you ate Chris Flexen's salary for them to get him off the books. So then it's all right. If you're sellers, what do you do? And we always thought, all right, well, if there was one piece the Mets had, that would be intriguing. It's the first ballot Hall of Famer Max Scherzer. And I wrote an article for Just Baseball this week before this Scherzer start, obviously, where I ranked the top 10 best players that could be moved to the deadline. And I had Scherzer fifth. Let me actually pull up that article so I can remember exactly what I had behind him, really, because I know in front of him I had Shohei Ohtani, number one, obviously, if he moves, best player ever to be moved. Dylan Cease was two. What was it? Was Stroman three? I think Stroman was either 3 or 4. He was definitely ahead of Scherzer. I'm thinking that. Oh, Blake Snell. That's right. So Blake Snell was ahead of him as well. Blake Snell was 3. Stroman was 4. Scherzer was 5. 6, I had Cody Bellinger. 7, I had Josh Hader. 8, Jordan Montgomery. 9, Eduardo Rodriguez. And 10, Jordan Hicks. Well, if I'm a team that's looking for a pitcher for this run, originally why I had Scherzer fifth is because you see what he did against the Dodgers. You think, well, that's a guy that can lock in and win a playoff game, right? That's what you're going for. And if you eat enough money on the contract, and you're just talking about the best players move, he should be considered a better player than Jordan Montgomery, than Eduardo Rodriguez, than Jordan Hicks, than Cody Bellinger, even. Josh Hader was another guy, like I said, too. I can't say he's a better player than those guys right now. I mean, maybe Jordan Hicks. If I rewrote the article today, maybe it's out of frustration. I have him 9th. I don't even know. And I don't even think he can be moved. So that would eliminate from the article altogether. Who could be moved? How is Max Scherzer getting moved? There's the no trade clause hurdle. And he's already said any article about trading me is clickbait. Okay. So that just means he's not going to get traded because he doesn't want to be traded or because no one wants him. Because I find it hard to believe that anybody who's watching this season and is watching Max Scherzer give up home runs in every single start, basically 75% of the starts, that's actually not even exaggeration. That he's given up home runs. And you're just going to sit there and say, yeah, we'll take him because of the name value and what he can bring. Yes, if Max Scherzer is on for a start, he can be one of the best pitchers in baseball. But those are becoming a little more few and far between. And what's in between is clunkers. And honestly, if I'm a team that's looking to make a push for the playoffs and even getting into October, and once you get into those big playoff games, I'd almost rather roll the dice with Jordan Montgomery because I don't think he's going to get lit up. He might not get me 7 scoreless, but I'll take 5 and dive giving up a run or 2 compared to what Scherzer's been doing. And Montgomery's probably better than that. So he's not even the best rental starter based on just the season he's putting up in talent at this point. Then you throw on the $43 million price tag. There's no chance the Mets are moving Max Scherzer at this point, the way he just pitched. And a start against the Nationals is not going to change that. He can go up against the Nationals and punch out 14 over 8 scoreless. And I don't think that's going to change the narrative at all. Because anytime he's pitched in a big game ever since the Padres last year, he's coming up short. At least that's what it feels like. So I think the Mets are in a really tough spot when it comes to this deadline, because I think the one thing when you had that meeting, when Cohen had that meeting, right, when Steve Cohen met with the media and he did his, midseason State of the Union, about what was going on with the New York Mets and what chances they had. The one little hope that you had was that if the Mets sold, there was a world where these expensive contracts you had on the books could be moved for a value prospect return. At this point, I really believe the only value prospect return the New York Mets can possibly get is trading Tommy Pham, and on an outside chance, Mark Canha. And what value that's going to be, I really don't know. And on tomorrow's show, I'm going to try my best to mock some trades of what the Mets might be able to get back for those guys and maybe David Robertson and what they could get on this market. If it ultimately comes down to this just being a wasted year and you sell every part you can, but you're at a point where you're probably not winning, almost definitely not winning this year. And you really don't have the pieces, even in a seller's market, to take advantage of that position. I think the best thing the Mets can do to take advantage at this point is skew towards their youth. And that's what we're going to get to next. What do the Mets make of their wasted season? But first, another word from our sponsors. The New York Mets play the New York Yankees, 7:05 Eastern Time Tuesday night. Catch every pitch of the Mets' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. As I already said, tomorrow's show is going to be a full trade deadline breakdown. I'm actually writing the trade deadline guide on the Mets for justbaseball.com. This time of year, we're doing 30 deadline guides for 30 teams. So any team in baseball you're interested in, we're going to have a full write-up. We've already done, I think, 18. This is why my life as a managing editor for the site's a little bit difficult right now, trying to edit all these and get them up. But we're 18 out of 30, and by Wednesday, we'll have them all out. So any team you're interested in, whether it's because they have a piece you think the Mets should go after, I don't know why, or they might be interested in a piece the Mets have, there's going to be guides on all of them. And so when I write this guide, I'll have a little bit more clarity on what the Mets can get back. So I'll do a little more research on it. But I also did the podcast about what do the Mets really have to sell that's worth anything. And that's where we are right now with this team. And I think they have been looking for any excuse not to sell. And this team hasn't given it to them. And maybe after you get to the deadline and nothing happens, the team has a renewed sense of just ease, right? Because there's so much pressure. But I don't know if that's going to suddenly make them a contender. And I think you really have to take a long, hard look in the mirror and realize where you're at. And to me, that means the focus is squarely on 2024. And so, yes, trade what you can. And we'll get to that tomorrow. But it means playing Mark Vientos every day. It means DFAing guys that aren't part of your future. So, Daniel Vogelback, bye. Send him out. What do you need him for? He's just taking at bats away from people who matter. Or just straight up direct Buck Showalter. You are playing Mark Vientos every single day. Ryan and Mauricio, I know the numbers have been down a little bit recently offensively. I know Billy Upler is saying he still has a lot of progress to be made at second base and left field. Well, decide which one he's a little bit better at and stick him out there every day. And if you trade both your left fielders to the deadline, the Mets probably should. Maybe it's left. Because long term, I think the Mets are better off with Ryan Mauricio in the outfield. Ultimately, I think I've been saying it for years now, right field Ronnie is the whom I'd like him to find so that he can replace Starling Marte at some point in time, as soon as next year, the way Marte played this year. But even if Marte comes back healthy, has a good season, at some point, he's only on your books for 2 more years. I think Mauricio could thrive in right field, and I think you need to get him a lot of looks out in the outfield. He's been playing more outfield than infield lately. I think the Mets are better off with Jeff McNeil at second base as he ages as well. So, to me, that's where it all starts. It's full youth movement. You don't care about your wins or your losses. It's just youth. And that's what the last couple months of the season are about. And honestly, as Mets fans, wouldn't that be more fun? Seriously. And watching these veterans go out there and lose, I'd rather watch kids lose than be frustrated when Carlos Carrasco gives up 10 hits in 3 innings. Not to say that Carrasco's automatically going to be bumped from the rotation, but at the same time, if you're skewing youth, aren't you better off giving David Peterson starts and just hanging him out there and seeing what happens of his season? I mean, Tyler McGill has gone to AAA and has gotten lit up like crazy. So I don't even know what the arm talent's there for McGill at this point, quite honestly. And it's not like he was ever supposed to be some top prospect. He has had his moments, but who knows what's going on with him. But there's other guys you can give opportunities to. If Mike Vassell seems like he's close to MLB ready, call him up. Call him up and give him starts, because you're just trying to learn what's happening in 2024 at this point. So I think the Mets have gotten to the point where you just have to look towards next year. You got to. And that means playing the young players and having the veterans take a back seat and trading as many veterans as you can. Although it's funny to see these reports about the Mets might be able to trade Carlos Carrasco and Jose Quintana. I don't see that out there for him. But for all you everydayers, tune in tomorrow, and I'll break down every single trade deadline asset or rumored asset the Mets have and what a return can be. I'll try to do my best to talk to a couple people and just gauge what type of trade value these guys have as far as for prospects. And we'll see what to make of all of it. But that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. And if you want to catch every pitch of the Mets hometown broadcast this week, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets.